Yeah.
Never that high.
Right or not?
Just one. Right now.
We're live now? Okay, good. We'll call the meeting to order. First thing I need is a motion to accept the minutes as mailed. Moved by James. Do I have a second? Second by Matt.
Do you have a quorum?
Yes.
Yep. I'm not on IT.
All right.
Any omissions, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. County attorney. So I guess that he sent a cybersecurity report.
Were you doing Roger? I can.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't come up.
Come on.
Well, I do have a cybersecurity report. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that, I guess to start with. Okay. If not, the other thing I wanted to mention is that for cybersecurity, we did do our first, I guess you could say, official phishing campaign to test the cybersecurity training that we've done. And the results came back in better than the campaigns we've done in the past. So I think our cybersecurity training is really making a difference. We still had some clicks, so it's still a little bit concerning because you don't ever even want to see one if you can avoid it, but the percentages are definitely down. We're still completing the campaign, so I can't give you the numbers today, but it was right around 2% when last I checked.
Is this a catch and release or is it strictly catch?
What's that?
Dana, did you
Catch
click on
and
something
release.
in your county computer? Did you click on some phishing thing in your computer?
Yeah, I think somehow the county messed me up. I had some link with them and it was like,
Yeah, we didn't fish Dana. He doesn't have a
I
county.
turned it on and off about 3 times and it fixed itself.
But we, one thing we did, what's that?
Who did it go to?
It went to everybody and for the Washington County and Gov email address. So one of the things we did a little bit differently this time is instead of the bad link or bad attachment going nowhere, is it actually was an educational experience. And so if somebody clicked on it, it went and said, this was a test, and then it gave them the email and what they did that was what they should have looked at. And so it was, we tried to make it educational rather than just, oh, you failed, or something like that. I mean, why? I mean, it doesn't serve any purpose if you can't
So the people you
educate
got,
people.
no, they got.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did have many people
failed.
report as well, so that was really good.
Was there a noise or like a siren?
That would have been interesting.
Like the old Max had space from the. I thought it was here.
Yeah.
Probably.
Space invaders.
All right.
Yeah. So that's all I had from a cybersecurity standpoint, unless anybody has any questions on that.
Okay, good. So let's move forward.
All right. So I'll start with project updates. We have one project coming off and a couple others going on. I don't know if anybody has any questions on the project updates at all. And if not, then I have the ticketing report. Any questions on either of those?
The secure forms, that's one that initially for public guys, but may eventually be available for other.
And it will be. Do you want to be on the list too? Okay. Absolutely. We'll start putting that out to all the departments because we have started
I
working
don't
on
know
it.
if you're gonna beta test it with them first to kind of get it out, or if you're coming to the product.
I think it'll be great. I think we might be looking to add on to it a little bit more too.
Okay.
So.
Maybe learning about code that I think might be beneficial.
Yeah, and I would say that to any department that's out there, really where people run into a challenge is if you're trying to collect information from the public or from anybody out there and you try to do it by email, you're always going to get email filtered out. You're never going to get 100% of them, and I have absolutely no way to ensure that you will because people are sending email from private email addresses. And so with the form submission, essentially what this will do is allow us to put a form on the website, and then any information you want to collect will be submitted into the form, and you will always get it 100% of the time because it's being submitted that way rather than by email. So I've got several departments that are that I'll be working with, to get that moving. Absolutely. Joe?
Terry, with the replacement of the patrol cars, we have a goal of 722, about 60% complete.
Yep.
Is that will be done before the end of the month or close to? Or?
So we should be. The computers are essentially all built at this point, and we've been working with the sheriff's office to get them installed.
Okay.
So the sheriff's office themselves does the install. They have to put the mounts physically in, and so it's really at this point a matter of them cycling the cars through to the shop so they can be in the shop long enough to get the install stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say that we're on track to make the goal.
I understand the patrol car stuff. How about probation? Why does probation take so long to implement the software?
It's not very long, actually. The project just started a few months ago. They've done the initial data conversion, and probation's in the process of reviewing the data conversion as we speak.
Okay.
So we
I
have
thought that was one
calls, yeah, every other week. I would say a typical software, 6 months to a year for a big software package like that to go live. Code took around that time too.
Once you get a big jump after the data conversion, that percentage will fall.
Right, so that's exactly. So once you do the first data conversion, we really get a chance to process it. We just had a meeting on Wednesday of last week to go through and get our initial look. So we're in the process of looking at it now. Once the initial look is complete, then we'll have a better idea of how accurate it really is and how much work has to be done on the backside to complete it. If it looks good, then you start moving into the next phase, which is typically where the users start training. They start looking at the data, making sure comparisons are good. And then you probably do at least one, but probably at least two more final data conversions to make sure everything is good before you go live. And then there'll be a cutover to go live.
Any other questions? Anything else for the committee?
Try to bear another question so I can make sure that this meeting doesn't.
Are you trying to avoid something?
Good.
You're horrible.
All right, we're done.
Thank you.
I don't know. You're a hammer.
Come on up, go to the water line. Let's go chair.
There's no handout.
Okay.
This was next.
Yeah. Yeah, set there? Yes. Yes.
Call a meeting of government ops to order. First thing on the schedule is to accept the minutes of June 21st. I have a motion moved by John, seconded by Matt. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, Matt, you're up.
I just got some updates this month where we are with projects, two of them. The Middle Falls DPW barn, I expect the pre-engineering feasibility study to be presented at finance. I've talked to both Cassie and Brian, it's good with them, as long as the architects are good with that date, which it seems like they are. We're gonna present that. So it's 11th of August. So anybody that's not on that committee that wants to come, that's the scheduled date. The public health move, I met with architects again this month, a couple times. We're getting pretty close to submitting the floor plans to Department of Health again. So I would say within the next month that'll happen, and hopefully we'll get a quicker response back from Department of Health this time. I think we will, because they're doing more stuff again. For the Fort Ann DPW barn project, I met with our chosen architect group, Labella, and we're finalizing the contract now. I think we went through everything. We're going back to Roger to review, and then we'll sign it off. And I think within a couple of weeks, we're going to have the first scheduled meetings with them to go over everything. And everything we had, get it present. One of the things that keeps coming up is the timeline, which everybody is fully aware of, materials and everything else. In the RFP that I wrote, and then when I interviewed them, I asked for creative ways to hit deadlines because it's a problem in the construction industry right now. You get led on and things drag out, and we don't want that to happen when we do this. So one of the things that came up was if we go with a pre-engineered building, which was the plans right along, is if we could go out to bid for the building, engineer that first, because there's about a 6-month lead time right now, average on a prefab steel building. So if we were able to, by this winter, early this winter, have the building part of it engineered, would we be willing to go out to bid for just the building, knowing that that's not the whole project, then the rest of the engineering and everything takes place for the civil and the groundwork. You wouldn't get the big project picture price, but we'd be pretty much locked in. We know if we went out to bid for this pre-engineered building, that's X amount, percentage of the whole project. So it would give us a pretty good clue. That's one way, instead of waiting till all the engineering is done in the spring, or by spring, and then have to order a building and then sit on it until now we're stuck next winter, and then you're into the following year. It's just one way, and I wanted to bring that forward now. I mean, it's a little bit different. We do, in any project this big, we have to go by Wick's Law, which every trade is bid out individually, your electric, your mechanical, that's common anyway. So the building would normally be put out to bid separate, but all in one package type of deal. We put it all out at the same time. So I don't know, we can talk about it further. This is just like a heads up. I mean, if it's something we want to do, it would help us keep a timeline of trying to be finished with that barn by, the end of 2023. So we don't have to make any decisions now. That'll come down the road. We'll have more details. But if you have any questions about it, or
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a good idea. It would just be the shell structural supports. What would not be included in that? Insulation,
right.
cut up over the rooms.
Yes, I mean, pretty much it's a big shell anyway. So all the prefab, right, the trusses, the steel, any of the metal siding, insulation would actually be included in that, in the prefab building.
So you have to have electrical before the insulation goes in, because is it going to be between the insulation and the wall?
Well, it depends on how they design it. If it's all, lots of times there's conduit on the exterior anyway. So I think they would make provisions for that.
John,
Are there companies that give you a bid on the whole job, the whole building at once, where electrical, plumbing, everything's included? Or is it always separate?
It's got to be separate over, I think it's over 750,000 or 500,000. Any project over that has to be bid separately. It can't be one general contract. Yeah, I mean, there would be contractors who love to do that, but it's not legal for a municipality to bid it out.
Well, the reason I was asking, it'd be cheaper for one set deal. You can't do that because of the cost of the building.
That's right, because of the purchasing laws. Now, doesn't change the engineering price. We're locked into that. So the engineering won't cost any more for them to, just engineer that part of it first.
Well, the contractor would have to buy the building anyway, then there's the markup on that. So we're kind of deluxe. We're not splitting the bill.
Right,
We're doing just the same thing as we're on the building.
that's right.
Dan,
Yeah, man, how does it work? Because you got to put a foundation in to set this building on, steel building.
Yeah.
And for your water and electric and any of your drainage, if you're going that building first, you're not going to know where this is, right?
Well, no, your foundation is going to be a separate, it's not, this is a prefab building. It's a erector set that's going to go on a foundation that's designed.
Right.
But we'll know where that is. I mean, you're still going to design the building, so if
Right, I
if you
understand.
know the toilet's going to be here.
Isn't every steel building prefab anyway?
Well, you could, yes, I'm say that.
Yeah, so,
A steel building is prefab because they gotta fabricate the steel. Now, the other options that you see people going with right now are, okay, we'll stick build it. Or, you know, there's other ways to build it that aren't, and you might meet your timeline with them, but they tend to cost more.
yeah, and no, I'm not looking.
So this is
at
just
any
one of the
that. I'm just-
options, and they'll probably present us with those other options too, like here's an estimate of stick building, and this is maybe when we could do it, but there's no guarantee that contractors are gonna even build it at that time,
So are you saying the steel building won't be erected until the other
Oh, yeah,
parts are,
all
all your engineering will be done before it's erected?
that's right, we're
Okay.
just,
Just like you're buying all the pieces and setting them out around.
we're
What you got
sitting
right
on the
now.
building until everything else is ready.
I
to
get the
fly.
picture now.
Yep,
Thank you.
so that way it's there, so we don't do a foundation and then find out that, hey, our steel building just got held up another month. You know, that's what's happening right now. You'll see a foundation and they'll sit there for 3 months because they couldn't get the building to put on it.
Dana,
Does these buildings, do they come walls already assembled, or does it come in great big boxes and you assemble it?
It'll come on pallets.
All right, so then there's not really a hurry that we gotta put a foundation in because we got a wall coming.
That's right. No, you're right. It's just, it'll be a truckload of metal siding, this will be the roof, this will be this. You'll have tractor trailer loads of beams and
stuff.
with a crane, they'll erect it.
Some required.
Yes.
Yep. Any other questions?
When we, when we did our sand shelter, we had to send an inspector to the factory to watch them build the hoops and things.
Yep.
Is that all part of your engineering?
That'll be part of the engineering for the most part.
Because ours wasn't, we had to hire a separate inspector to go to Canada. So,
As far as I know.
if you did it on the farm, you didn't need to do that. If it's municipal, you had to.
Okay, now, I can look into that further, but I mean, that was pretty clear in all the meetings,
But was it-
that it was we were A to Z in the contract to get everything built.
That's what we thought, Phil.
Well, I understand, and I'll push against them because we're paying them enough, like,
Yeah,
if we're headed to.
no, that was just one that we didn't see coming.
I'm only gonna ask this question because Brian's not here, but going forward, are you gonna put either a level 2 or a fast charger opportunity in these buildings? No, seriously, because in 10 years it,
So
they may be electric and
Well,
it does not have to
the
be
main,
then.
the main grid runs right through there. We aren't engineering for something done on, we kind of talked about this before, 10 years down the road, the technology may be completely different. Level 2 probably could be. You know, so I don't want to, hey.
So you're preparing in case that happens?
The power,
You're
there's power
preparing
enough
that
there.
now.
There's power enough there. I'm not, no. The answer is no, we're not prepping
No, we're
it.
still alive, let's not be getting that.
I think it would be a waste of our time and money
No,
to put something there now.
just prep for it.
that
Technology,
10, right.
So
that
that's
10 years.
technology.
Especially in a DPW building, right? I mean, it's not really a public other than maybe if, you know, Sam wants to have a couple there.
No, I mean,
you know, then it'll be-
before the pickup trucks, I'm saying.
Right, we have one pickup truck at each, and if, I don't think it's
Okay.
worth doing much right now. I mean, we have the power there.
Daryl,
Thank you. Matt, are you comfortable with the synchronization of timing with your concept of ordering the building first?
Well, comfortable is not a great word. I mean, I'm hopeful. We're doing the best we can to try to make it, but comfortable in today's time, it would be bad, you know, to be comfortable if you think you're really gonna get something on time. We can
Yeah, I
only
mean,
go by what they're-
I guess I'll clarify my question. You're comfortable with the synchronization of everything, ordering this thing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. All right, thanks.
It actually makes a lot of sense, and I think we are able to do that, you know? I think as long as we make the decision that we're willing to do that. I'd say the only drawback where some people might not want to do that is you're buying a building before you know the full project price. You know?
Yeah.
Although we have plenty of estimates, and at that point, we'll know even more of an estimate, you know, we're gonna dial the number in of the complete project number, but you won't have that complete project number if you just order the building first. That's the drawback of doing that. That's why somebody would say, no, that's not.
Right, right. But in this case,
In this case, we're going pretty far, forward. We spent quite a bit on the engineering so far, we're gonna get to that point, and I don't see that as being a drawback for us, because we've done our homework. We
right, right. So,
know what our project's gonna be.
right. So the point on the project is we're doing the project.
Right.
Okay. Yep. So buy it now, buy it cheaper than probably what we'll get it later.
Maybe.
Exactly. John,
Thanks, Matt.
Fort Ann's gotta agree with this, or we're the head agency?
Yes, Fort Ann would have to agree. We're the head agency. I don't believe they would, I believe they would probably follow suit with us, no problem. I would go over and present the same thing to them. Now, this is just talking, this is giving you a heads up that as I get farther with the architects, this is gonna come up, and then we will have that decision, around the resolution, so the architect feels comfortable going ahead and doing it.
Each month you wait to order this building is probably gonna be more affordable.
Well, we hope.
So if you would order the building, when do you think you would be ordering it? Because
I would say January, but by the time they design it, we go out to public bid, which is a month, receive it, and then start signing contracts. I would actually see January, February before we order.
okay, so
I know
that's
it's July now.
time for the price.
Right, the market change considerably by then, and let's hope it does.
Because
the right way.
gasoline is coming down, but gasoline is the only thing coming down. It's weird. Normally things come down together, but things are going up at gasoline coming down. So it's, how do you predict it?
It's lagging with fuel.
Sweet corn's gone to the roof. You locked in?
Any other questions about the building? Okay, next.
That's just the updates I have for this month. If anybody else has any other questions, anything else.
Oh, I got.
Go ahead, Dan.
You, in the very beginning, you touched on nurses, you're gonna get them over shortly. Well, my question is, what's left in the building when the nurses come out?
Cornell Cooperative Extension.
And
We've had discussions with them,
weren't they talking about moving closer to Greenwich?
I won't speak for them, but that was the idea, right?
I heard that
Yeah.
at one of our committee meetings, so.
Right. And we would be giving them plenty of notice,
Okay, so my question, I'm leading up to it. What are our plans for that building if cooperative extension moves out? What's our plan? Have we got any? And do we wait
That's part
until
of
it comes
that's what
empty to
we're-
start talking plans, or do
We're
you?
working on it.
We're working on that
The subcommittee,
in the
that's
Our little group.
their group.
Oh, when did you meet?
So we've met a couple of times, but right now, because of the summer, it's a little bit harder to get everybody all together. We're still moving forward. We've had 2 meetings.
And being fair, I asked her to wait because
He's got.
I have so many projects going on that what I need to do to get everything ready for the meeting, I just haven't had time to do it. I feel like here in the next couple of weeks,
We're thinking tentatively shooting for August for the next one.
Is there a record, who's on this committee again? Just a quick summary?
Not Dan and me.
Well, I'm not on it either, so I'm just curious.
Is it?
So
Working
it's
group.
Melissa, it's a working group.
Working.
It's Melissa, myself, Bob, John Rozell, Dave O'Brien. Huh? They're the Amish group. We're not on the Amish group. Bob is. We drag them into it. And Brian,
This is the work group.
the working group, my working group. That's it. So we have the county administrator, budget officer, myself, John Rozell, Jay Skelly, Dave O'Brien.
So you're not planning on meeting in the fall, is what you're saying?
It's just
What you
in
said,
August.
summertime.
my idea then would be
Mid-August.
to shut the building down when we got everybody out. No matter what we were gonna do with the building, but we wouldn't be fully heating and trying to maintain that building right away unless it was, something emergency.
We had 2 meetings and that's 2 meetings more than have ever been had in this
The idea of us
conversation. So we're
moving them
gaining-
is we're moving them to a better place because it really isn't meant to house people. So my idea wouldn't be to all of a sudden start moving people back in there because that would defeat the purpose of what we're doing.
Put it up for auction.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, man. See you. Get out. Be free. Hi, Stephanie. Come on
No,
now.
I just freaking all.
That was the first ACC. I think so.
Feel like keep it.
Department of Education.
I was looking around.
I didn't want to rip
I
off.
forgot Al. He's in my group. Sorry, Al.
It must have been behaved because she forgot.
I don't know. Yes. Well, I have trouble because sometimes he blocks Matt, sometimes Matt blocks him. I can't see inside. I did lean forward to see if you had a
Other
question.
papers here?
Oh,
Forgot your gavel.
that's fine. I might miss and hit the wrong person. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay, so I was asked to come up. Apparently, there's some more questions or still questions about the mortgage tax. So here I am.
Go ahead, Dana.
Well, look, my question was never answered, so I had to ask the next month later. My question was the supplemental tax, many towns had the same dollar amount.
Correct.
Hartford like 941 or something like that.
Mhm.
But the original mortgage tax distribution, nobody was the same.
Correct.
So how can the supplemental have people that are the same as the original? What's the math formula involved?
It's a percentage of what the final amount is due, which is how the state sets up the original amount. So back in 2018, when we went and I requested the additional money to be taken, because we were only set at 125, where we were actually allowed $8,125. The supervisors wanted their towns to be whole when that money was all said and done and spread out, instead of it staying at the county. So approximately between $20,000 and $25,000 every 6 months has to be spread out against the 17 towns. The only way to do that is to do it by a percentage. So every.
Is that the supplemental you're talking about?
The supplemental.
Okay.
So the state does their portion. I do my report. Al signs off on my report. The county or the state approves the report. It comes back and that's the initial setup. The additional money, the supplemental money, is the difference in a percentage format of what you would have got initially. So when you add that to the amount that the state has approved on the initial money taken out, that is what your true money would have been from the initial money.
Okay, let me ask another question, maybe it might explain it to myself in my brain. The original amount, so if I have a lot of mortgages in the town of Hartford and they come in, I get some of that money just for the town of Hartford. I don't get anything from town of Hampton.
Correct.
But the supplemental, the whole pot shared up. So it's a little bit different than when I get my supplemental, those aren't additional shares in the town of Hartford.
Okay.
That's the whole county that's divide up that pizza.
No, you still buy your percentage. So
But if we're by how come towns would have these, many towns would have the exact same
this
amount?
goes down to the state and Al signs off. Okay. Once this comes back, then I have to sit in my office. And each month I have to figure out what the percentage of mortgage tax was brought in. Okay. So I have to base it on the 8,125, which is what this report was. And I have to reassess it to the 125, which the original back in 2017 used to be.
Okay.
Okay. So then I have to readjust all those numbers on that report to show what the difference is. which is, in this case, it was $20,000. Then what I have to do is from that report, go back to the state report. And I have to figure what percent of that mortgage, the original mortgage tax, was by each town.
So by the time you add in the supplemental, each town is still different.
Correct.
But mathematically, you're a valedictorian of school, you know must be good at math. Mathematically, how can the supplemental be the same for many towns?
I'd love to sit with Steph because I did not.
Is it a coincidence?
I don't,
Okay.
I can't wrap my
And
head
have you ever
around.
seen it being the same for some multiple towns in previous true-ups?
Well, listening to what she's saying, I'm inclined to still question like Mr. F is as
Right.
not anything against what you're saying.
Mhm.
I think I would like to sit with you and kind of see,
She's suspecting the process.
because mathematically, I can't wrap my head around how two of them can be the same.
There was
Or if they weren't.
It was
they
like
weren't-
4 or
5.
Right, so I'm still struggling with the answer.
Brian,
Well,
Because
I almost think I got it, but that doesn't mean I get it.
so what she said is correct. The deal that was made was, we're gonna try to make sure the towns get what they would have got had we not taken the additional admin money. But mathematically, that spread back over should result in the same number
to the penny.
to the penny if there wasn't some kind of similar original disbursement. So I still would like to see it, and then we can come back. I know that it's a third time, Mr. F, and I apologize, but I think I'd like to sit with Stephanie and just, I might be able to make her life easier, because it sounds like you're going through a lot of hoops to make it happen.
Sounds to me like the addition of the two numbers at the end is the percentage.
Correct.
But if you add a
That's what it
supplemental,
said to me.
But
each supplemental should have been a little bit
No.
different.
Because once you add it's almost like when Deb does the taxes, when we're working on tax stuff, everything gets rounded, everything gets changed. So what you adopted at your town level, it shows up as a different percentage on your bill, and you're like, no, I was 0%, or I was up 2, or I was up 3, or I was down 2. And it always is a different number. It's because everything gets rounded forward, backwards, whatever. But when you get all done, it's the same amount you actually taxed for. This sounds like the same type of thing to me, that once you run the number, and it just happens to be that each of those 4 towns that were the same needed that same number added to that number, so that cumulative number equals a percentage.
So you're saying then that's a coincidence? It just happened to be that
It
number?
just,
It can't happen to be that number
the
for 4 or
number
5
added
towns.
on is what made the percentage come out.
So that's interesting.
I
Can't wrap your head around it.
I can't wrap my head around it.
Well, that's what it said to me when she was talking. I could be.
But it wasn't just like 3 or 4 towns with the same number of Hartford. Then there are other towns that had the same number as each other. There was many numbers that were repeated, and without the, I wish I had, you had the supplemental? You can see what the numbers were, because that's what doesn't make mathematical sense
But
to
even,
me.
even if the math is right,
No, I don't
I
have.
feel like
this
she's
one. I
going
just.
through it.
Yeah, a process
You
might
can't
not
back
be
into the front
necessary.
end without knowing what your final number is, and your final number doesn't happen until it gets screwed up, so it shouldn't be that way.
Unless there's a different math formula that you use to disperse the supplemental, unless it's a different formula than the original.
I don't know.
That's the
how-
only thing that would make sense, but that's why I keep, to me, it doesn't make sense, so that's why I keep asking.
But the unique thing is, we've had supplementals for years, since 2018. We've never noticed it being exact for 4 towns than any other supplementals.
Well, maybe it was, but I just never, I know what I
You
noticed
picked
it.
it up, no, I think,
Maybe I didn't pick it up
There-
before.
There's always been, because it's,
well, the same number?
if you look at the percentages, when you do the percentage of the towns, you have a 0.3%, 0.5%, that's coming off this $20,000 additional money.
So is the supplemental a fixed number?
Yes,
But
So she's saying it's 3% for your town and your town and your town, 5% for my town and his town and his town. It's already pre-baked.
It's, yeah, but
that's
it's.
not the same way you do the original.
No,
That's not how you do the original.
True.
So it is a different math
True.
formula.
because you couldn't have 4 towns with different mortgages all at 3%. So that's what I just,
But it's 3% of the fixed number of 20,000. It's not percentage of mortgages.
And many towns may have 2%.
But the original goal was to make you get the same amount you would have got. So you shouldn't have, in theory, you shouldn't have 4 towns with different mortgage distributions having the same supplemental distribution. That's what I'm struggling with. So I wouldn't mind sitting with, because even if the math is correct, which I trust Stephanie with my life, but I also feel like she's going through an awful lot of work that maybe we can help with.
What you're saying is you live in the true up world where it's actually a true up to the number.
Right.
She's saying the supplemental is a fixed number. It's not a generic, it's a fixed number every time.
But your share percentages will be the same.
The percentages are the same. Dana's 3 and Jim's 3. So they're gonna get the same amount.
But they shouldn't be 3 if they were different originals.
But according to the state, that's the way the program's set up. So maybe you can rectify that.
Yeah, and it might take 3 seconds to be like a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And now, I don't want to muddy the waters, but I want to get something clear in my mind. What I recall, and this is where you need to help me, Stephanie. Back in 17 or somewhere along there, you were relatively new and the board said if you can find any more revenue, find any more revenue. And you discovered this, I don't want to call it a loophole, but a way to gain some of our mortgage tax back that we had to pay in.
Correct.
And so it's not, it's just an additional revenue stream. It's not something that was taken away beforehand. It was just a way to get additional. And so I give her a lot of credit for discovering it. And I don't want to sound like we're drilling you on, things aren't right, but I thought that you had to always keep that separate out because it was an admin fee that you could charge and get some money back. In which case, I don't think the formula could be the same. I think it's almost a flat rate on.
Right, it's a flat rate.
So, yeah, you can look into the math, but it's not something we lost. It's something she found, a new revenue stream she found.
But even
I
if-
wanted to make sure
But
that.
even if that's a fixed number, how can White Creek and Hartford have the same percentage? Because we live in the weighted vote world where everybody's different, but apparently this formula, there are equalities for towns, right? So some's at 3, the next one's at 3, one's at 5.
Yeah, it's,
And that's
And that's why, we just don't
that's all
understand why.
state supplied money, or state supplied figures.
the initial is all state supplied figures, yes.
So all you actually do is put in the money into a formula that the state supplies with a pot of money and it's divided up, and that's why it comes out.
But it's not really reflective of the mortgages in Hartford or the
No.
mortgages in Granby.
No, it's the
This supplemental is treated,
administration of it.
it's treated differently, which was my question. Is it treated differently or is it the same as the original? Nobody had the answer. So I think
True.
But if the original intention was to make you whole for what you would have got, then the percentages of the original distribution should follow into the supplemental. And it's not, so something is different.
otherwise the
How is that
original
the
distribution.
intention?
I think they're doing.
So
that together.
what the deal that Stephanie made with the board was, and I credit, again, I echo Mr. Shaw, it was a moment of genius, it was great discovery. So what it was, hey, we're gonna take this additional admin money that we're allowed to take. The possible resistance could have been, wait a minute, that's gonna result in less mortgage tax money for distribution. So the deal was, hey, we're gonna do a supplemental and look at what all 17 of you would have got if we hadn't taken the additional, right? That was the conversation. Let's look at what you would have gotten if we didn't take the additional admin money. And then we will redistribute those monies so that the county benefits, the county general fund benefits from the additional admin money without hurting the distributions to the towns. That was the intention.
Correct.
Right. So to me, the percentages should flow with the base distribution. And so I'm missing something as well.
Because the base distributions are not identical.
So-
Right.
Isn't the fact that this is based on not what each town gets, but the total amount coming to the county?
But
That's the percentage being divided.
if you look at what the town got versus what it would have got, the difference between those two numbers should be supplemental. So I don't know how
That's
the
not
number.
though.
Well,
I don't think it is.
I don't think it's counted that way. I think it's she's talking about percentage of the total mortgage tax come to the county. It's where the percentage is taken to get the supplemental to start the calculations. So it wouldn't go back to each town, it'd go back to the total of the county. County got $10 million in mortgage tax, it'd be a percentage of $10 million, not a percentage of each town.
Right, she got the 20,000, like she
Right.
said, and split it
Right.
accordingly.
That's what we're missing here is she's getting a flat amount. It's not based on each town's portion, but the portion of the total mortgage tax coming to the town, county.
So the question is, why is Dana's 3%, Jim's 3%, Dan's 3%, and John's 5%? Somebody make that into
The
a
state
formula,
supplied that.
and that's what it is.
But she
It's
can
not
spend-
0.301643 for you and 0.29431 for him. They just give her a number.
Let's hear from Deb.
Well, how do you determine what the administrative fee is?
The state determines that.
State determines.
Correct. And that was done on 7/1/2018. They said, based on what our mortgage tax is, they did a portion. We were allowed to collect $8,125 a month, as opposed to the $125 that we were taking in for umpteen years.
They set a percentage for each town, or just that amount, just that amount.
Just that amount.
So then, how do you go from the 8,000 you collect each month to get a percentage?
A number for each town, how do you translate that?
So
And that's
this,
the map I wanted to take a look at, what you're asking right now.
Okay.
And again, it's not a
Yeah,
reflection on you.
no, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure why it's been 4 years before anybody wants to know where I did my
Because I would
figures
just
from.
the same number.
This one stuck out more than the average bear because there were so many the same.
They've always done.
No, it's always been that.
Really?
It's just we're a little slow,
Yeah,
that's all.
We've had 4 or 5 towns the same for supplemental for years.
We're only 4 years behind, and we really do bad.
Well, you know, when you think of that small number, it could be
The
shares.
state doesn't change that number of
Sure.
8,000.
No, as far as the state is concerned, that $20,000 does not belong to the towns. That belongs to the county.
The calculation you're
What
questioning
was,
is a-
what was agreed upon, because you all wanted to stay whole, even though you were losing out on the other 3 avenues that could have gained from that, we agreed to make make that $20,000 back to the towns to make you whole.
And the state supplies a percentage of that.
No,
Internal.
with the numbers that are provided to me through mortgages and the state, I have come up with I sit down and come up with the percentage every 6 months on what the state what your dollar amount is that you received from the initial amount of mortgage tax. So your mortgage tax on the Argyle's taxes that they received was $35,289.54, which their percentage of their initial mortgage that the state figured is they got a percentage of 0.05 of the total $770,000 mortgage. So out of that 20,000, what I have done is figured out what the 0.05% of that portion, which should have gone back to Argyle. And I did that for all 17 towns. And that's how I figured out which portion of this 27,000 would belong back to the town. Because they were allotted from the state originally 0.05% of the initial mortgage.
Did anybody else have 5% besides our guy?
White Creek. This year was, what year was this? This was the September 21. We actually had 1, 2, three that had 0.03. We had 3 that had 0.04. We had 2 that had 0.01. We had 2 that had 0.06.
You're talking about the original? But when I looked at the original, there was nobody that had the same number, so so some of those towns should have, right?
No, but your town has a percentage of that initial number. Your percentage of that the full chunk of mortgage tax that's being separated to you for Hartford is
What'd you say, Dana?
Then we get lower and lower, because that's getting more questions.
I got 4
This
years.
is good.
I got
This
4
can
years,
benefit the
I
rest
have
of
4
us.
years of questions to ask.
I haven't said a word over here.
It's
going on, Dana?
Hartford's
Making money
total
sitting there.
mortgage out of this that they figured was 0.04% of the total mortgage tax
Your number would
collected.
have come out the same if you're.
That's the initial. Or is
When
that
you
the whole?
start rounding
Initial
with
supplemental has.
and
No,
going to
that's
point
that's your portion of the mortgage tax is 0.04.
Hartford's part.
Okay, so by the time you figure in the supplemental, you've got to keep it within 0.0.
Correct. So you have your initial money, plus you have that additional money, which is actually what your portion will be.
So the supplemental, I think the easiest answer is the supplemental is not count by county. It's a county amount that then is a residue.
Correct.
But why wouldn't you use the same original numbers that each town had to just make it simple?
Because there is no original number, because you're based on, your original number is not based on the 125 anymore. Your original number is based on the 8,125.
The state determined we're good enough.
There you go.
So you have to take that.
States and the sentences is clear to me.
It is clear. I would still like to out this thing. I gotta look
Maybe
at the
make
way
it
the math is,
But
but
the number that's already
You
hit
never know.
0.05.
But again, I want to emphasize, it's not anything questioning your abilities.
No, 2 cents.
No, I'm not,
Not that at all.
I'm not questioning that.
It makes sense to me.
Well, in the past, we want to make sure that it's not questioning your ability.
Well, this is, why are we going into, is it personal or not? These are numbers.
But
Numbers
Just so-
don't have personalities.
Oh, they can have.
Well, September, October.
Okay, so we beat this to death. Is there anything else?
I don't
to
think
come?
we have, because I'm not still.
So they left it as they're gonna talk and see if they can make it easier and come up with another way to explain it.
come to finance, we'll report back.
Thank you.
You get the other half.
And now you know the rest of the stuff.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before government ops? Seeing nothing? Adjourned. Sorry.
Yeah, see, you can make anything last forever.
No.
It's like that marathon candy bar.
They get personal when they get a question.
What did you say? When you were there?
I'll use.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're on this, come on up there. I was gonna ask you to sit on the table, you want to sit over there? I didn't know either. I was double checking to make sure I had. He's not on this committee, thank God. Dana doesn't like spending money on tourism anyway, so.
Sandy said you had your say.
I got 4 months. There's no way they're.
Percent total collection is what determines the distribution. Those should flow through the addition. Those same percent. So what's the total collection?
The total collection was exactly extrapolated out. 4%.
Yeah, you get that? Talk about finance. I'd like to call the ag claim tourism meeting to order. First order of business to accept the minutes from the May 24th, 2022 meeting. So moved by Dan Shaw. Second by Dave O'Brien. Any comments on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? All right. Broadband update.
Doing it in reverse order.
Oh, you want to do tourism first? All right.
Well, actually, I'm going to give you a quick update on various funding things first. We talked at the last meeting about a couple of sort of well-funded major statewide programs that are getting ready to be released. One of them being Restore New York. Applications have now been released. If any community has a project in their community, which, to remind you, is intended to remediate eyesores, brownfields within the community that are inhibiting growth and development, the municipality can apply for funding to work on those sites. You have to put in a letter of intent informing Department of State that you're looking for funding. And those letters of intent are due by August 11th. And then what will happen is Department of State will just basically review and say, yes, it's eligible, not eligible. And then full applications are due October 10th.
Is there some that are already come forward to you?
Yes.
Because I remember there was one in Greenwich one time they wanted to clean up real bad. Is that, and it never happened. Is that one that's come forward?
It's so that would basically be the building that burned in Greenwich. There is some question on that.
I'm thinking of a different one.
No, you're thinking of the old Golden Police.
Yeah.
In back of the old station. There was the old.
Oh.
Why does that one not come to fruition?
So I have had conversations with the Greenwich mayor and town supervisor. They're all aware of the program. It's up to the communities to decide what they want to go forward.
I've heard that one never been here. I'm like, why isn't that?
Well, a year ago or 2 years ago, they did paperwork on it. Mayor did.
I can ask
Working
her.
on it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of ones that have been out there forever to slip through the cracks. That's why I was asking.
And
Yeah.
I tell you, Jim is here. Maybe he knows more about it, if that's what you're asking.
Go ahead, Jim.
I think you're referring to the Dunbarton site,
Yes.
Oh, okay.
and we just finished a revitalization brownfields grant, and we identified that site as a site where we would apply for this. So Mayor Pam Fuller knows more about that, but I think the plan is to apply.
Jim.
Hey, and Jim, was there any ever, I don't know, who ended up with the Stephen Thompson paper mill? Was that ever going to be one that was going to hit the possibility for this type of grant work?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I don't know if that's private or just.
I don't know either.
So just to add to that, I didn't realize you were referring to the Dunbarton site. I didn't connect. I did have conversations with Mayor Fuller about that. What is unclear is the grant requires site control. So either the municipality has to own the site or they have to have written permission from the owner of the site. As of right now, I do know that there's been an eminent domain process that's been discussed for the Dunbarton site. I don't know that it's far enough forward that they would be eligible, but Mayor Fuller is aware of it, and we've said we don't know if it's ready enough, so I believe she's having discussions, but that site control is an issue there.
What's the name on it?
Dunbarton? The old mill that's down, I was thinking the other way when you said behind it, yeah. So the other, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, behind the old station.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's been the subject of the BOA, Brownfield Revitalization Plan, so it is being worked on. It's just, it has to be done in a series of
They got
steps.
the one across from the Susan B. Anthony house too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a different one. That's over in East Greenwich. Yeah.
Mhm.
That one that we're referring to,
Somebody else recently purchased
that and the EPA did some cleanup work on that. Dunbarton or Golden Fleet.
The other major funding program that was just released, you've all heard of the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. That's what Glens Falls 10 million. So the state has, the DRI program still exists, but they've sort of made call it a little sister program of the DRI, which is called New York Forward. The idea behind that is to try and start getting that funding out instead of to large cities, which is what the DRI is intended to target. It's now intended to disseminate down to like the village and town level. So instead of one $10 million allocation, each region, which is in our case, the entire capital region, will be able to select between 2 to 3 projects across the region that will be awarded between 2.25 to 4.5 million. So I'm hoping that this program will continue to get funded in future years, because again, it's really the only way that our smaller communities can participate, because we're just not going to be competitive from our villages to some of the larger cities. But that is now open. Again, it requires a letter of intent. They've not stated what the application deadline is, but any communities interested in that, there is a little bit of information available about it.
So do you believe that, like here, Hudson Falls being our biggest metropolis stands the best opportunity?
So
even if we wouldn't get it, that's the one that stands the best chance here.
I would say yes, probably this area, because it is so close to the Glens Falls MSA, that the primary thing that they will look for is that there is activity, develop, and investment like on the table. Like basically it's we want to help a community that is starting to make those moves go forward, not just take a community that's got problems, do some revitalization, and then hope that it attracts change. They want.
They've already done that for years and years and years.
Right. They're basically saying, okay, you've got to give us a reason to believe that our investment is going to make a significant difference to start economic and community development within this.
So like the Masonic Temple,
That's what I'm saying.
Strand, the
Yeah.
Derby Parks,
Yeah.
they've already proven.
That's the point, is that if
So
you've
they've
got
proven they're willing.
Right.
recent or planned investment, that would help the competitiveness of the application, yes. A couple of other things, as you all know, submitting a couple of grants, one for the highway barn and then one for the CDBG to assist Homefront. Those will be going in this week. We had also discussed at, I believe it was Health and Human Services, the possibility of the county submitting a CDBG award that would assist with childcare. We were going to partner with Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. It does not look like that is going to happen because the childcare providers that we reached out to are themselves short of resource, and this program had to be stood up and completed within a year. And basically the partnering agencies just didn't think that they could do it. So it's not likely that that application is going to go in. Some really good news for everybody. The Kingsbury Senior Center, Kingsbury Fort Edward Senior Center, we assisted them with an application to get a new 9-passenger van, which it's a federal application. They're going through the process, but that will assist them to transport seniors and handicap, because it will have a handicap ramp on it. And woohoo, Washington County Fair, we work with them to submit on a $600,000 project to get broadband, broadcasting capacity, and a number of other measures that are really going to help the fair both have internet and then increase their marketing and broadcasting capacity. They were awarded $512,000 towards that project. They have a match of $128,000. And as you may recall, there were 2 issues that we wanted to help the fair with. One was broadband and then one was septic. We could not put both of them in the application to the EDA because it was going to make it uncompetitive. So we submitted through NBRC an application to specifically help the fair with the septic systems. That has been submitted. Hopefully we will know in September what the result of that is. So as of right now, we know they've got help with broadband. We don't know on the septic. Once they get we understand, like, are they getting that award or not? And that helps us to determine in terms of assisting them with any portion of the match or projects or some of the ARPA funding that we talked about. I have suggested to them that we wait until September so that we have a better idea of what help they might or might not need.
Will their history of need there on that help them with the, it should?
I think that as soon as she starts in, it's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
We're gonna
With the
emphasize.
history there, I mean, I can't imagine that they wouldn't get that if anybody would get it.
Well, this is their second time applying for it. We've spent a lot of time working with Department of State, which is the agency within New York that's like the federal partner. NBRC is a federal grant. There has been some misconceptions about what the fair is, and we worked really hard. Basically, there was this opinion that said, well, it's a 3-day event, and why should we like spend money on the fairgrounds for 3 days worth of activity? So we worked really hard to correct those misunderstandings in terms of the fair trying to become a year-round venue, how it impacts the communities, et cetera. Hopefully, with that understanding gained, it gives them a better chance of getting funded this time around, but we'll see.
And the fair is doing a really good job adding more events throughout the entire year.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so any questions on just general funding stuff? Now we'll do tourism.
All right.
Okay. So in consultation with Mr. Griffith here, we took a look at the January to May, because we don't have the June numbers yet. Gross sales and tax revenue for short-term rental market, and tax sales is obviously Airbnb only, not Vrbo. So the long and the short of it is that, interestingly, for the first 5 months, comparing 2021 to 2022, our gross revenue is up 2%. But if you compare our tax collection, same 5 months, our tax collection is down by 3%. So even though gross revenue was up, we're getting less money. The reason for that is because Airbnb distinguishes between taxable and non-taxable revenue. So there's really only a couple of things that could have contributed to that change. We're still trying to maybe get a closer answer as to why. But one of them is it's possible that the number of 30 days and overstays is increased. That's kind of counterintuitive, because you would have thought that during the pandemic and in previous years, the longer stays would have been more, but I don't know yet. We haven't really looked into that. The other possibility is, as the cost of everything is going up, as Mr. Griffith mentioned, cleaning fees are one of the things that are pretty consistently going up the board. So if cleaning fees are increasing on every Airbnb property, and that's non-taxable, then that could explain why, even though overall gross is up, our tax collection is down by a small percent.
The delta in non-taxable was about $80,000 last year. At the same period, it was around 20,000. So at this time, in January to May, it was about 100,000. Just my property alone, I increased the pay to the housekeeper by $50. So if that's $50 times the number of stays, we worked it out. It's roughly $1,100. If there's 100 properties, there's your $100,000 right there in non-taxable. So
See, that's what we did too.
Yeah.
Instead of raising the rates, we put a fee on.
and you can't raise your, and the result is you can't continue to push that onto the guest, because then you're not getting the booking. So you had to keep your rate consistent, but you increased the pay to the housekeepers, and that as a result made more non-taxable revenue through Airbnb. So
Total was up, but
Right.
now that makes sense.
right, and it was only down slightly in comparison to, when you talk 3%, it was a couple $1,000s. But hopefully we'll see in the summer months with June, July, and August, if Airbnb operators were able to command more rate. If they're able to command more rate, we would hopefully see a larger delta. But June, July, and August are and September are the primary months when we can make the most amount of revenue. So.
Yeah, some of the data analysis that we look at, it's unfortunately comparing apples to bananas, because some of them look at revenue based on the point of booking, but well, we're actually paid based on point of booking, but some of the data analysis looks at it at point of stay. So if you book your vacation in February for June, we're gonna get the tax revenue then. But the actual analysis of when is staying, when the high occupancy rates are, they're gonna look a little bit differently because booking and staying can be two different time frames.
That was something I said to Laura too, was I saw my bookings, they were slower this year. The beginning of the year, they kind of match up to last year, but as you get into June and July, you know, we obviously had some inflationary issues and people weren't booking longer vacations. So they're booking shorter vacations. What I found is that I got more bookings in the month for the month, meaning that the booking fee is going to come, hopefully, and we'll see this when the June reconciliation comes, that we're going to see a larger amount in June that will bring us back to that, and bring us back to flat year over year as a result of those bookings coming later.
And why did you think that occurred? Because I noticed
Oh,
the same thing.
inflation. You know, first thing to go away when you're planning, first thing to go away is travel and leisure. So it's same with families and businesses. First thing to go away, we don't need to go anywhere. We're gonna stay home. You know, we'll go to the beach around the corner.
Well, you get the people that used to fly away for a week, they take 4 days here
Right. Yeah.
because it's close by, you know, it's changing.
Yeah.
So just a couple of other things, just wanted to show this to everybody. Saratoga Living, we decided we want to try and get some attention at the track. We have a full page ad in Saratoga Living that basically highlights things to do within a day away. This particular ad happened to focus on like food related experiences. We have a bunch of other social media that will be coming out there that's related to all the different categories, adventure, wine and cheese trail, et cetera.
It was almost the center of the magazine too, so that's really good.
It's good placement.
Yeah.
So also on the videography that we've been doing, we just released the latest video, and this one focuses on the wine and cheese tour. And as you may or may not know, so we actually have a Washington County tourism YouTube page. So when you go to the Washington County tourism site and look at the videos, which are posted on that site, it also directs you to YouTube. So in some cases, people are going straight to YouTube, and in some cases, they're going to the tourism site and linking. But I found it really fascinating that we have several videos posted on there, and YouTube tracks the number of views. On that wine and cheese video, which has been up there for 10 days, we have had 2,700 views, which is more than all of the other videos combined. So people are looking.
That's track season.
That's tracks, yeah.
I mean, that's perfect time.
There's some catchiness to it too. I think the start of it says "Get cheesy in Washington County" or something like that when the video starts, and it's you know, and there's some cool music, and I think people are starting to see, you know, if it's our Facebook followers, I think we're posting it in the Reels portion of Facebook, so it's getting attraction through Facebook and through Instagram, and this is what happens when you start to have, you know, content that's being delivered on a regular basis. Your algorithm, you're fitting more into that algorithm, that your stuff shows up more. So the same people are probably the same people that see the fall panel fall crawl.
See, I can't say it either.
But you know,
The cheesy parts too.
yeah, as they're you know, staying up to speed on some of the stuff, and they're watching more videos, you know, it helps our visibility rate high.
The concept is very similar. If you were going to get in the car and drive to a retail store or drive to a restaurant, and their opening hours are inconsistent and you don't really know whether they're going to be there, you don't bother looking. Once you start seeing regular content and regular information, you're more likely to periodically check and see what's new and what's happening. So that's basically building the visibility, which, you know, little at a time has definitely been happening. So I have to make a confession. You may recall that I asked this committee in finance for an additional $700 to fund the postage to send out those haunted history tour. I'm afraid I've blown through that $700.
Well, then they did your job, right?
We got another 200 requests in this morning. So as I said to Al, I have no way at this point of quantifying how much postage I'm going to need, because until we get closer to the end of the year and we know how many requests for these, I don't even want to guess anymore because clearly I got it completely wrong the first time. So I'm going to wait until we're a little bit further down the year to figure out where we can transfer some funds from. But it's a very good problem to have. People are asking for those in boroughs.
But do we know if we're getting a return for what we're sending out?
That's one of those metrics that's very hard to measure.
That's the key.
Right. You know, I guess the only, that's hard because, and that's always been hard with newspapers and paper promotions because you don't know what your return on investment is.
You know what your return is if you don't send it out.
The easier way is if you can send them, a link, and then when they come to a site, their phone hits that site, then you can see a geofence and you can know what your return is. But yeah, it's.
But if there was a coupon that they used when they went there, that when you sent it out too, it would give you.
Yeah.
That would take care of it. You're paying for the information.
Go ahead, Sue.
Jim, you know, they have the paranormal activities in the jail.
Yeah.
And they have them, I think 5 times a year, 6 times a year, and they're sold out the minute they go up. And this has been going on for years. So this is really, it's very interesting to see how, you know, Pam's desk is filled with all of these envelopes. It's not only the postage, Laura, it's the amount of action that you and Pam are having to do with these requests. My hat's off to both of you, because if it get any results like we do at the courthouse, that would be great for Washington County.
I'm afraid we had to buy more envelopes as well.
You know, the only other way is when we do these meeting of the minds and, you know, bringing up this conversation or having individual, you know, maybe work groups with businesses to see, you know, like tourism businesses at the end of the summer season get together for, you know, a breakfast session. Hey, how did the season go? Was there, you know, they're going to have more data on where the customers are coming from because of the purchases, you know, whether the purchases were up, whether their attendance was up, you know, so I think, you know, that's something I've seen in other counties that they do. And I think we're not there yet, but that's, you know, yeah. And that's part of the reason why we joined the ARCC. If we want to create a survey or something that we can send around to our businesses to ask them how the season was going, you know, maybe we can do something like that, electronic survey. You know, they have the list of, you know, tourism businesses in Washington County that they already have relationships with.
So speaking of meeting of the minds, we are working on putting together essentially informational session or creation of a working group. We're still planning it out to get some of the Airbnb hosts together to sort of determine these are what resources are, these are what best practices are. We're looking at doing that sometime in September, but it's still in planning stages. But again, the idea is a truism in any kind of hospitality related industry is when you start to measure those metrics, they are typically measured by heads of beds. And we have always suffered from the fact that we don't have a lot of chain hotels who carry those metrics and that we can then use. We are having to sort of create our own system of metric development so that we can measure the effectiveness of what we're doing as well as we can. And those short-term rentals are what we have. Okay, that's all I have. Any questions on tourism?
Tourism, I got shot down on this idea years ago, but sometimes you gotta just wait for the time to come right. The Hudson River is booming right now. I think from where I am on Hudson River, there's 3 new docks within a half-mile each way of me. And the usage of the Hudson River is huge now compared to what it was after the dredging. And I brought up years ago, back when Mitch Supernaut was supervisor, about the county exploring the idea of a boat launch. You're talking tourism, you know, there's a lot of potential now, and there's money available. I mean, granted, you've got to find a piece of property, but I think it's something that, right, you got people in the north, the people in the center of the county complain that their funding, Hewlett Landing is too far to drive, or you take Lake Lauderdale is too far to go to. It would be a perfect fit. And wanted to bring it up again, so people be thinking about it. That might be something we ought to consider.
Where would be an ideal location? I'm all about
Well,
rail and lakes. So I think lakes, rivers, rail systems are the most underutilized, I think forms of extracurricular activities that can be done, and you see it being done in Warren County, Saratoga County, Essex County, they're using those facets. I've always said that the back kill over by me is probably the most underutilized tourism piece of promotion that we have.
but even that is growing. I mean,
Correct. Oh, it's always been used,
Yeah.
but we sit there and watch all these people come and tube every single kayak, and yet nobody's there to sell them a hot dog or to
Right.
to take advantage of them or have a little roadside stand where they can pick up some other mercantile that's from our region.
Well, I talked to before. I focused on the town of Fort Edward, and at that time, the town of Fort Edward was in turmoil over the watering site shutting down and all that. And it has been for a long time. Now that is kind of getting some direction, some clarity there. I spoke to Tim Fisher and he thinks it's a great idea. So maybe the board, because that's originally from the town. You have to get support from the town.
I think when you brought it up before too, you were brought it up as asking for us to support a grant, but then the grant wasn't 100% further down. It ended up being a 50% grant, and that's when
But the town
committee
didn't.
pushed it to the
Yeah.
side then, because originally, when you proposed it, you thought it was gonna be fully funded, and it wasn't. Then it
But the
got-
town did not support it at that
No,
time.
and neither did, because you brought it up in here through committee.
Right, and the point was where I was going with it, was 2 locations. One where the Moses Kill enters the Hudson River. That's the last standing mule barn on the Champlain Canal. And it was, I think, for sale or is for sale. And the other one is the GE site where they used as a staging area for dredging. And and that's, that's quite a chunk of ground, and GE still owns it. So there are locations, and I'm not looking to do anything big right now, but I'm just saying this is a good time, and there's a lot of money available towards tourism and that. And it brings revenue to the county. So I wanted to plant that seed, and
Well, I think you showed us a location when you gave us the boat tour.
yeah,
Years ago, you showed us one of the
right.
spots.
And it's
Maybe that was by the
there.
mule barn, I don't know.
Huh?
Was that by the mule barn?
I don't know which one I showed you.
I don't know which
You
one.
had to go into the bridge to go to the mule barn, but the other one was just part
It
of,
was closer to your place.
a mile
That
down.
might have been the one you showed us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the village of Fort Edward also has their area where boats stop.
But that's the canal, isn't it? The canal. They provide the tie-up and the water and the electricity, and they paint, they go and do the painting on everything. But I think it's the park is the village. But, there's not a boat launch there, and I don't know if there is a location.
I just want to make us compete to where we feed ourselves, but it's not a bad idea.
If I was thinking the same thing, with the DRI money, Fort Edward, I know we threw Hudson Falls under the bus, but Fort Edward is certainly another area where I think DRI money could certainly, if you're creating something that influences the waterfront, and repurposes the
And
use
we're
of water.
also,
I think that would-
fire zone, does that enter into any help at all?
They don't exist anymore.
Well, yeah. And that's what New York State is all about right now, repurposing their waterfronts, to get more recreation.
But the first thing that's gonna come up is that there's a DEC launch site right on the other side of the river. It's, as the crow flies, it's really kind of close.
Right, but you gotta
Get to it, you gotta drive.
You're gonna swim.
And the parking's not great.
Right.
But, when you look at Dan's map, it looks like that with that GE site, here's our Fort Edward launch, and here's one right over here.
Right.
Yeah. So that's something you have to overcome. It would be a hell of a lot better for everybody if it was on the Fort Edward side. And you do a lot, the LG launch site was a hell of a lot better launch site. They had to take it all out, it's all tore out now.
We're talking about buying a piece of property and
No,
scrapping it?
no.
I mean,
No, we're talking
this
about,
is like a 30,000 foot level, but the details are lost and it doesn't make any sense. From cost benefit analysis, I'm not seeing it.
we're talking about planting a seed for Fort Edward.
Take whatever, give them the ball and run with it.
Yeah,
That's what's going on.
So
So if they don't want to run with it, we're done.
to Supervisor Griffith's point, the New York Forward / GRI program, the way that that program works is Department of State gives you a whole raft of planners to take a look at the community and say, based on past investments, based on what's on the table, let's undertake a planning process that specifically identifies implementable projects. So for example, if there was an investor partner that could be brought to the table to do something like that, that can all be planned out. And then once the plan for that specific project is done, then they put money at implementing it. So if you look at what happened in Glens Falls, it was largely about South Street, but then a bunch of different things that happened in the South Street area actually got direct funding. But the first portion of it was to plan it. So yes, certainly Fort Edward, if could do a New York Forward application that basically said, we believe we have an underutilized resource. We believe that we may have investing partners. Help us to plan this, and then ultimately there might be implementation money. But you're right. It's very early stages, but that's the kind of thing that funding could assist with.
In Greenville, we have the same opportunities.
Absolutely.
Also, because you have the same, Charlottes has been redone. So
Yeah.
you have a lot of things that would prove out that you could build on that. So there's gonna be opportunities, but you're right, it's more, got to start at the town level to get there. We're just bringing it to light. When I originally raised my hand was to mention about the article on LinkedIn and Wally's, because I saw your picture and didn't like the story or posted the story.
Apparently
You were front and
I
center.
was front and center.
You were front and
Thanks,
center.
Amanda.
But it really looks tremendous. The last time I was at Wally's was long before it was refurbished and looking to go back.
The rooftop bar is going to be open in about 2 weeks. So if you didn't know that, they've cut out space on the roof and they've created a rooftop bar.
And that was in the article.
We got a whole tour of the upstairs,
And who's we and why?
So ARCC the Wally's had just recently joined the ARCC.
Oh, okay.
This is their 1 year anniversary, and the ARCC was doing the ribbon cutting. So it was a ribbon cutting ceremony for the ARCC at Wally's, for Wally's.
Okay. The pictures were great. It's impressive.
It's a very nice facility.
They have a whole, they have a whole plethora of plans that they have, and it was to walk through the upstairs and to see that they've already remodeled much of the upstairs, and they're ready to start doing some other things to bring in. If you drove by Wally's earlier this evening, they added tables to the sidewalks. They've increased their seating capacity. They're doing everything they can to do it right and to create more energy around Wally's. They want to be what Wally's was before. Bringing the community back downtown. So.
Anything else on tourism? Okay, broadband. I'll try and be quick on a complicated subject. So we have discussed, although it's been a while, that New York State is putting out a broadband map similar to our effort. They just started it a lot later than we did. That broadband map is out. And for your information, the address where it is mapmybroadband.dps.ny.gov. If you go onto that site, what you're going to see, you can either type in an actual address or you can zoom in on a community, and you're going to see a bunch of dots. It aggregates structures, it's sort of a 30,000-foot view into a number of different large and small dots. If you keep scrolling in and eventually click on an address, it will tell you exactly what access to what services those particular residents have and whether the residence is considered served or unserved. So served is fiber-based, unlike some of the state's previous maps that sort of tried to pretend that satellite was actually internet. that is not any longer considered internet. So I have not thoroughly looked at every dot on that map, but I will say it is reasonably close to our effort. I mean, I think they identified 1,700 addresses, and I had said by the time you add and subtract, I had probably 1,500. So it's reasonably close. There is actually, if you're in your community and you're looking and you see things that you think are errors, there is actually a feedback button, and DPS is encouraging everybody to, if you see something that is inaccurate, use that feed button and give them information about what you think is inaccurate. So while New York State has been doing their broadband map, the FCC has been working on a similar map, but the FCC mapping is used quite a bit more data than the federal map does, or the state map does. So what the FCC calls this is broadband serviceable location fabric. It's sort of a very long sentence. They hired a company called CostQuest, combed through reams of data, including 911 data, building permits, structural analysis, to actually identify specific structures that should be eligible for broadband. The reason that this is important is that all of that federal broadband money that we've been talking about is going to be allocated to the states based on the FCC mapping. So if there are discrepancies between what the state says and what FCC says, it's going to cause inaccurate formulas that in terms of how they distribute access to that federal broadband money. So there are a number of discussions. There were, based on some immediate money that the feds released to the state, there were some inaccuracies that were identified based on the FCC mapping. There are efforts to straighten that out. But again, it's kind of tricky because you've got two different mapping programs that are going on that don't necessarily exactly coordinate, and they're being used for different things. The other issue that's happening is the director of the state broadband office left, which basically means that while BPO should be in the process of developing all of the plans which are required once we get that allocation of federal money, right now there is nobody running the BPO office. So that, I believe they're going through a process of trying to hire somebody, but it may put New York State a little bit behind in the planning process, but I would still anticipate that by the time they finish combing out these maps, they get somebody in the broadband office, we develop a plan for New York State and actually start releasing the NOFOs to get access to all that federal money, it's still likely to be sometime in the fall. As a county, we have access to that FCC data. Providers have to pay for it. We can get it in no charge. I am working on it. I had to actually register with the FCC. I have to send all of these applications into the FCC, and then CostQuest, the company that developed it. There has to be an executed license agreement, which I'm sure Mr. Wicks will want to take a look at. And then once all of that is done, we can actually have access to what CostQuest says are unserved areas. So there is still some reconciliation to be had. There is still federal money coming. I am still standing by what I said earlier, which is by the time all of this is sorted out and by the time we actually have money to spend and we actually get new connections from this funding, it's likely to be 2026.
And 5G is
Laura, now is that, you're talking the FCC mapping, right? It's gonna take a while to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the process.
Right.
Right, yes.
Right, so when you do get it, you said the county can get it with an agreement. Is that gonna be shared with the towns?
Towns can also request the data. I believe, I'm gonna have to look at what the agreement says, but since it's supposed to be available to municipalities at no charge, I would assume I can share it, but I have to see what the license agreement says.
Well, even if you didn't, I'm part of the county, so if you get it for the county, it seems like Eddie's town would have it, right, available?
Or you can apply for free, just like Laura did.
Well, yeah, but she said there's quite a process, so why would we all want to do this lengthy process if she doesn't?
Well, I'd be interested to see from a federal standpoint how we
Right.
compare to, places in, Mississippi or Missouri or, Midwest country, Midwest states. that-
And that is in fact one of the issues, that because of broadband for all and because of New York State basically reporting to the FCC what a wonderful job we did on deploying broadband, that has unfortunately hurt us.
Yes.
Because it essentially means that what was reported as served might not have been served by FCC standards, and that's where some of that reconciliation still has to happen. And that's why I want to look at the federal data, what the federal data thinks we have.
Right, and there's plenty of underserved areas out west that might take, the federal might look at as,
All
precedent.
still have bigger issues.
Yeah.
Yes,
More than likely.
in terms of percentage of
Because New York
population.
State, no
served,
matter how
yes.
good or bad, they did quite a job
Right.
Yes.
in the big picture.
And there's no doubt about that. We, there are a lot, 4,000 new passings in, from, or actually more than that, 5,000 from SLIC, several from Spectrum. So yeah, I mean, we're down to, out of a population of 30,000 households, approximately 1,500 don't have access to service.
That's huge.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And just as a reminder, I did put in a request to Congresswoman Stefanik for $1 million in broadband in funding. It was selected as a project to be moved forward to the Appropriations Committee, so we won't really know until the end of the year. But between the possibility of using some of our funds and that 1 million from Stefanik, my hope is that if we are awarded that, we can start seeing connections sooner than 2026. That's my goal, is to get them out there as
And
soon as
to
possible.
get a provider or whatever providers are closest, how is that?
I mean,
What's the
we're
plan?
gonna have to work out how we do that,
Okay.
but I think we want to do it in the most cost-effective,
Yeah.
quickest manner.
Down east, and we've been in communication with Verizon, SLIC, and Spectrum, and asked them to give us a price to fill in the gaps, all the gaps. And they've actually broke it down by road so that we can compare prices per road to get the money used. So we're going to be able to utilize the most effective way, cost-effective way by doing it that way.
And for those of you who were not aware, many of you have dealt with Kevin Egan, who was the regional representative for Spectrum. Kevin has moved on. There is a new interim account rep. I'm not sure whether that's temporary or permanent, but just FYI to you, if you've been reaching out to Kevin, he's still with Spectrum, but he's in a different position now. So
What's the name of the guy for SLIC?
that's Kevin Lynch.
They're both Kevin.
They're both Kevins.
I was thinking, did I get that wrong?
Nope.
I'm positive the SLIC guy was Kevin.
Yep, you're right. It's Kevin.
You ought
I'm
to,
talking.
you ought to do like me and use the wrong last name on it when you're talking to the opposite one.
My
They don't
brother
appreciate that.
Kevin, another brother Kevin. Another brother
Yeah,
Kevin.
Daryl, my brother Daryl.
Listen, I was just showing that even though the young guy's young, I could still relate to you guys.
I'm sitting here going, I don't
Pick up the brother, Daryl, that's great.
When is that old?
You wanna know how old I was when that was out?
No.
Okay.
Was it a black and white show or a colored show?
Knew her was
That's
colored.
not appropriate.
My granddaughter,
You just don't laugh.
I told my granddaughter something was inappropriate, that I'd seen it when I was a kid. I knew it wasn't a show she should be watching. She goes, oh no, it's different because this is a color show. That's not black and white. Ooh.
All right, and that's basically all I have.
Anybody have any other questions? Go ahead.
I just have another for your other, which unfortunately I did bring to you ahead of time. At District 8, we're gonna have to start reviewing that soon. We got an email from Diane Ayers. And I don't know, Debbie, if you got one or not. I had Heather forward it through. I don't know why it came directly. It came to Heather in my office.
No
myself.
paperwork, yeah.
So, okay, so you should be getting, we do have to have an environmental protection board meeting at some point too.
Actually, that might beg a question. So on the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, I think this probably did a question. Terry Potachik was serving for ASA, but Renee Boudblanc. Do we have to look at, does the language say the executive director of ASA, or did it name Terry Potachik specifically as a member of the Farmland Protection Board. You might be-
I think it's
I
accurate.
thought we did it. I thought we fixed that. I
We
thought we
did?
fixed it. Put
So it is
in.
Renee now?
I think
okay.
we handled that last year. So.
With no other business to adjourn. Thanks, guys.
Mark, I just have a question.
Yep.